Get going. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Okay, first thing is to approve the agenda. First note I'd like to make is that Mark Bartusek will not be able to make it tonight. He'd like to be on the agenda on March 7th, so we will eliminate item number 1. Besides that, does anyone have any changes or additions to the existing agenda with that change? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended, deleting item number 1.
Second.
Second by Dave Brusick. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, the agenda is approved.
Mayor, just as a point, before you go too much further, I just want to take time to introduce City Attorney Scott Riggs was unable to be with us tonight, so sitting in for him is Bob Alsop. I think you've met Bob before on other matters that have been before the City Council, but he is filling in Scott's place tonight.
Okay. Welcome. Okay, first thing on the agenda is introduction of ordinance amending section 90.13 of chapter 90 titled Animal Regulations. Just a comment I want to make is that when we started this process last year, all we were trying to do was clarify the existing ordinance that we had on the books, which was that I think farm animals were not, including poultry, were not allowed in city limits. So that is an ordinance that has been on the books, and I don't know when it was put on the books, but like I tell everyone, it was BC before Chuck. So really what our task was when we reviewed this was to clean up the language from farm animals to be more specific, and that was at the intention of our city attorney to try to clean it up to make sure that it was not as vague as we had. So I just wanted to make that comment as we get into it. Mike, I know that you're kind of stepping in for Ken, and Ken is our guru on it, but he is out ill today. So
I will provide a brief background in case we have members of the audience that are here for the first time, although I think most of the individuals that are here tonight I believe have been involved in various parts, whether it be in front of the council or the planning commission. But just as a brief background for those that might be watching on TV, as you indicated, Mayor, correctly, going back to last year, is that we brought to the council, I believe it was about July of last year, information and a recommendation with the city attorney's assistance to consider the adoption of a moratorium on the keeping of farm animals, which would give the city not to exceed 1 year to further study the issue. That we believe that we had a number of situations that were in violation of the city ordinance, and instead of taking an active enforcement position at that time, that you adopted a moratorium so that we could take a look at further language to clarify where we ultimately wanted to go with that. The Planning Commission talked about it at their meeting in October, and it made a motion to the council to recommend that we develop code and zoning ordinance amendments that would allow the keeping of backyard chickens, with regulations being developed and an annual permit being required. The council reviewed the Planning Commission's recommendation at their meeting on November 16th and ultimately instructed city staff to work with the city attorney to develop both city code and zoning ordinance amendments that would do just the opposite, that would prohibit the keeping of farm animals within the city limits, and that the zoning ordinance amendments require a public hearing before the Planning Commission, which was held here this past month. And in taking a look at that, I believe the recommendation from the Planning Commission was contrary to what the council's recommendation to them was, and that was to allow that. And again, I'm not going to go into the complete depth, but the ordinance that was taken back to them and Jenna, if I misspeak. Having been there, you can probably clarify as a member of the Planning Commission. But there's recommendations on the ordinance that's in front of the council to do a couple of different things. One is the clarification in our city code as it relates to the keeping of non-domesticated and farm animals that are prohibited. And it's the addition or the clarification of farm animals. And Mary Jo, I believe there was some copies of the ordinance that was available in the packet of materials, but this was made available at the Planning Commission and has been available for those that want to request it. But it's more of a clarification of farm animals as to what's not included or allowed to be kept within the city limits. Additionally, there's a couple of changes to the zoning ordinance as it relates to the addition of the inclusion of that farm animal language, as well as a third item whereby all properties are prohibited from keeping, maintaining, or harboring any farm animals as defined by this ordinance. So you've got a city code change that's going on, and you've got a couple of zoning ordinance changes which are the basis of the recommendation that is coming from the Planning Commission, and they are recommending just the opposite of what the council had asked them to consider. So your action tonight is the formal consideration of the ordinance that amends section 90.13 of the City Code Chapter 90 titled Animal Regulations of the City of New Prague, and also amending sections 3 and 4 of the New Prague zoning ordinance relating to farm animals. So on that basis, although the Planning Commission held a formal public hearing at their meeting, you're still allowed to take any public input or testimony that you believe is appropriate. And if you open that up for public comment as you consider the introduction of the ordinance, that we would ask anybody that would want to comment to come to the podium and give their name and address, just so that we have that background information for the record. But that's as simple and as short as I can make it, not having been the primary staff person involved, and hopefully I didn't misspeak with any of that, Jenna. I hope that kind of generally relates to your recollection as a Planning Commission member. So with that, Mayor, the ordinance is in front of the council for your formal consideration, the hearing here this evening. Your action would be to introduce the ordinance tonight and then consider the adoption at a subsequent council meeting.
Okay. Question I have for you, Jenna, I guess. Now, you were on the Planning Commission. You probably weren't involved in the front end of this. Do you feel the Planning Commission understood the initial, in my opinion, the initial act that we requested them to look at?
I think there was a little bit of confusion, and myself being new to it, a little bit of the planning and zoning making a recommendation to the council and then it coming back. I think the second time when it came back to the planning and zoning, I think it was clear, Ken made it quite clear that it wasn't the task in front of the planning and zoning to come up with a new ordinance, it was to strengthen the language of the definition of it. And so the last time it was voted and it didn't pass to strengthen the language, they definitely knew that they weren't in support of strengthening the language.
Okay.
Just to help further clarify, the reason that it had to go back to the Planning Commission and that a public hearing be held is because it was a formal change to our zoning ordinance, which anytime that's considered requires a public hearing action. So it wasn't just the amendment to the city code, it was also an amendment to our city zoning ordinance that necessitates and requires a formal public hearing, which is why it was back in that format.
Okay. Any council members want to make comments?
Not at this time, I don't.
Well, I'll just say that I attended the public hearing at the Planning Commission meeting too. I didn't speak. I just wanted to observe and get some get a general feel for the feeling of it. And to be honest with you, it was very emotional from the standpoint that the people who spoke, who have chickens, they love these animals and they care for them, and the instances that they gave, I found myself kind of flip-flopping back and forth a little bit, where at one point I was dead set against them. Then after listening to the stories, I was trying to see their side of the other story as well. And And in the instances of the people that spoke, I think they're not really presenting a tremendous problem. However, we can't treat all citizens differently. And just because the three that got up and passionately spoke about the animals and seemed to be doing everything right and are very conscientious about their neighbors and screening and keeping the coops in good working order and free of smell, or as much smell as they can prevent, I still found myself going back to the fact that how this came about was that we did receive letters from citizens who were complaining about the smell and the sounds and everything else. And so what I did is I really looked out my back door and my deck, and I tried to envision on either side of me where I could, literally probably jump from my deck to the lot line and think if I wanted to have chickens sitting there while I was trying to barbecue or entertain on my deck, or right above or right below my bedroom window. Do I want to hear chickens at 5 a.m. with, albeit I know there's no roosters, but chickens do cluck. My mom grew up on a farm. My grandparents farmed. I was there as a kid. I collected eggs in a coop. I remember the smells, I remember the sounds, and it's just not fair to impose that type of environment on surrounding neighbors. And that's my personal feeling on it. And while I flip back and forth a little bit, I am going to stick with my original feeling of voting against not only chickens, but tightening up the language for all farm animals, because as we know, we've heard where people have been interested in goats, bees, any number of things that, where does it stop? Where is it next? So that's my personal feeling.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I've been part of it too. It's been one that I was against, and listening to it and asking lots of people about it, watching the newspaper, reading in the media. What I keep going back to is that these chickens have been here for at least 8 years, as some people have come up to testify, and had maybe one complaint on the one situation that happened. And so I struggle with the idea that, dogs make more noise, dogs run into everybody's yards. These chickens, for the most part, people don't even know they're next door. And I just have to appreciate a healthy lifestyle, a healthy choice, and I would hope that we could structure our ordinance to be able to help enforce any kind of a rule if they became a nuisance to a neighbor. So I'm finding myself flip-flopping on it.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I do. I've read all of the information put forth to the Planning Commission. The comments were made by the individuals there. I've talked to people. I've gotten other letters, phone calls, ranging all the way from people that support chickens to people that are dead set against it, and anywhere in between. Some say, well, it doesn't matter to me too much what they do. Others have said, it's okay as long as it's not in my backyard. But I've also read what the CDC has said about it, and I have knowledge a little bit of microbiology, and especially in the area of viruses, and that the word isn't out finally yet on what actually caused avian bird flu, but knowing that viruses are able to adapt a lot to their environment, mutate considerably, I'm a little concerned that we're not getting all the information yet on what harm some animals might be able to inflict or inflict upon humans. I don't want us to have to worry about that. I grew up with chickens in my backyard. That includes also horse and rabbits. 50-plus years ago, they were a lot more prominent than they are now. They were well accepted. People use them for food. But a lot has changed in this community since then. And I think we have to be a lot more concerned about those animals that we allow our neighbors to have. Having said that, I'm not changing my mind. I am not for chickens in the community, and I would vote in favor of the new amendment.
Okay. Amy, you want any comments?
I've been listening and reading all the minutes from the. I understand people are emotional about it. It is a personal family decision. But my first thought on strengthening the ordinance hasn't changed. I still don't believe the farm animals should be in town. I can understand, and there's nothing wrong with people having different thoughts about having the farm animals in town, but I don't believe for public safety, for staff time, for enforcement, that all the citizens, there's more that I've heard that have responded to me that do not want them. So I would be in favor of strengthening the ordinance.
Okay. I guess right now I will entertain anyone who would like to speak on behalf of this subject. If you would just state your name and your address, please come up to the microphone. It's here at the center so that it can be picked up on TV.
Okay. My name's Tawny Hoskin, and my address is 118 4th Street Southwest in New Prague. And I touched on some stuff last time at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting as well. And then I went through and looked back at the video. And I appreciated hearing your guys' thoughts last time because before we came in blind, I didn't really understand the concerns. So I did some research, and I wrote an editorial in the paper, and along with a petition that was signed that I sent along to you guys. And I just kind of wanted to address some of those. Again, the first one that was brought up, and you've kind of brought up some of them, but I just wanted to throw some facts out there because the thing is, everybody has their opinions. Everybody has different opinions. Some are for and some are against, but really the thing that you have to look at are the facts. And there are many facts. One of the first things was avian flu. And you'd brought up that you'd done research on the CDC website as well. And I did as well. And since 1997, only 3 cases have ever been reported in the United States for the avian flu. They have highly pathogenic and low pathogenic avian flu influenza. And there's never been a highly pathogenic one in the United States, but there have been 3 low pathogenics, and they had mild symptoms and recovered. And they were all involved with culling the birds, which means that they were involved in slaughtering the birds when they were sick. The CDC website also states that commercial farms are much more frequently infected than backyard chickens because sun and free range kills the bacteria or the virus. So in essence, backyard chickens gets rid of the avian flu, according to this website, which is the CDC. Another thing that was brought up, our chickens are too noisy. And so the facts that I looked up were chicken cluckings are actually 60 to 70 decibels, which is the same decibel level as a human conversation. So if it bothers you to have a friend be like talking in the next yard, that would be the same level. Roosters are louder. They're 90 decibels, which is as much as a dog barking. So I kind of understand the rooster thing. The smell was also brought up. And the facts about that are a 40-pound dog generates more solid waste than 10 chickens together. So my neighbors have a 40-pound dog, and if I had 10 chickens, then we would be equal, you know. The advantage to chicken manure is that it can at least be used as a fertilizer versus dog poop. While we're talking about the spread of diseases, dog mouths can carry, just from licking, you can technically get salmonella, hookworm, tapeworm. You can get stomach bugs. You can get all sorts of stuff from cats scratching you. You can get ringworm, all sorts of stuff from their feces as well. So it's kind of in the same boat. Chickens have been considered domesticated animals for quite some time. So I understand the side of maybe horses, goats, bees. They take up more space. They are not considered domesticated. I put chickens in the same category as dogs because they are domesticated, and they're considered domesticated animals. Another thing that was brought up was we're no longer a rural community. We're more urbanized in nature. The more that I researched in Minnesota, Minneapolis, Carrie has some information on that, but they just passed new laws in Minneapolis allowing more leniency in chickens. The chicken ordinances, Savage, Shakopee, they are definitely not considered rural areas. They're definitely urban. So I don't feel like that's a very strong point. It could be considered, but I just wanted to bring up those facts as well. And then also predators. That was something that was brought up last time. And the fact is there's already predators in New Prague. We have lots of little bunnies running around, and they chase the bunnies. The thing with chickens is if they're kept, like we've discussed previously, in coops and they're safe, they actually are very beneficial in the fact that they kill rats, small rats and mice, snakes. The Zika virus is kind of a scare, at least it's starting to become more so in the United States. People are getting nervous. Chickens eat mosquitoes like it's little candy, you know. They get rid of all those pesky little Japanese beetles that take over our house. All sorts of the things that we don't like, they also get rid of. So there are some checks and balances with the chickens as well. Something else that was brought up was people just aren't responsible. And that's something that Ryan's actually going to touch on a little bit, and we didn't want to overlap on that. But did you guys I have a lot of information, a lot of statistics here. My personal thing is everybody has their opinions, and some people are going to like them, some people aren't going to like them. It's the same thing with dogs. But as long as they aren't posing a health risk, and like we've said, there's tons of cities that have them. There are a lot of people that have had them for many years. And there was the one complaint, and we kind of figured out what that was, and that was because there were ducks and not chickens. Did you guys have any other questions or anything that you are concerned about that we could help maybe find a compromise?
Do you have chickens now?
We want to get chickens. We have a coop, but we've been kind of waiting because we didn't want to get them and have to get rid of them.
Okay. Were you aware that there is an ordinance already on the books?
When we moved it to New Prague 2 years ago, we called and we talked to many people, and nobody could really give us a straight answer. And so we weren't ready the first year, and then the next year we saw that it was passed that you could get chickens, but then it said that it was in a trial period for a year that you could have chickens. Is that incorrect? Because I have an ordinance here that says that there was a trial period that we could have chickens for a year.
It was a trial period to determine how we're going to change the ordinance to tighten it up. Chickens weren't, as was said earlier, chickens have never been allowed in the community since the previous ordinance was adopted, and I don't know when that was, but.
Okay. Because when I called, there's people that were confused about it, and so I got the impression that we could. We don't have them yet, but our neighbors, a couple houses down had them, so we were waiting to see because we'd heard about the meeting starting, and so that's when we got involved. So.
Okay. Yeah. Any questions for?
No, other than you're right about the avian flu virus. My point was that because viruses change so quickly that medical science really can't keep up with their changing and their possibility of affecting humans. That was my point. Mm-hmm. It's the same way with the Zika virus. I believe that's a flavivirus virus, and it too, they're not sure yet whether it's that particular mosquito that's causing the birth defects or maybe something else. It's because we don't have a lot of concise information yet on many types of viruses, of which there are a lot.
I agree with you completely.
That's-
There are
that's-
all sorts of viruses all over. And I think that's something that, if as you're saying, it's unknown, so I really don't know much about that. I'd have to do some more research. So, and I did submit this to you. I just wanted to bring it up one more time that I did get a petition. There's 115 people that signed it in New Prague. I think that's huge because there were 600 people that submitted the pool survey back and you physically mailed it to them. I just put it on the Facebook page. So to me, that says that the voice of the people, just from this, says that they're in support of it. At the last meeting, Ken said that they had a couple people call that were a little bit, this was 2 weeks ago, I don't know what's happened since. He said that there were a couple people that called that were kind of, were a little bit against chickens, but they weren't willing to leave their name. But he had a lot of people call that were in support of it, and they left their name and their address and that type of a thing. So from just my perspective of what I'm seeing is people are for chickens. I don't know if people were willing to leave names for complaints and stuff like that, but once people have been more informed, when I wrote the editorial, I had a lot of people come up to me and say that, oh, that was a misconception. I didn't realize that. So they kind of are more okay with it. I don't know if it's more of an misinformation or what. So I don't know what the complaints have come in. So
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Hello, my name is Carrie Smith Metzdorf. I live at 14117 7th Street Northeast. You probably saw the article in the paper. That was me and my daughter and my dad, my husband, whatever. We are here because, as you probably read, we've had chickens for 8.5 years. And in all that time, up until last summer, didn't have a complaint. Nobody even knew they were there. That's what I find interesting about this whole thing. We're coming and we're fighting this when people didn't give a rat's butt until it was raised by the council or that one complaint. And is that all it takes is one complaint? It seems kind of backwards to me that the laws are being made, you're trying to strengthen a law, but you're using the wording that the ordinance didn't explicitly state that you can have something. To me, as a New Prague citizen, this concerns me greatly because I have a lot of things in my household. How do I know if one day my neighbor isn't going to complain about my cockatiels? What else do I have? I have 3 pet mice. If my neighbors don't like those, they find out that I have that, or you guys decide to suddenly want to change the count or the limit on the number of pets we're allowed to have, because you don't explicitly state that, doesn't that put a lot of stress on the members of New Prague? I mean, it's like saying nothing is what you think it is. I mean, normally in my life, I guess, I look at the law book, and I go to the cops and I say, okay, I got rules for driving. I read my driving manual and I know what I can and can't do. There was nothing in these ordinances that said I couldn't have chickens. So what would the normal person think? If it doesn't say you can't have it, then you should be able to have it. So now to come back and say we have to get rid of them because all of a sudden you're trying to strengthen the ordinances just seems kind of backwards. We haven't had any problems with having chickens other than when we had ducks, and that was what caused the actual complaint. And we got rid of the ducks now. As soon as we found out that there was a complaint, first thing we did was said, that isn't fair to the neighbors. And that's how we would be if the neighbors actually had a real complaint about the chickens, but that wasn't what was complained about. The smell was from the ducks. And so we're sitting here arguing now smell and disease and everything else. And my feeling is that, any virus can mutate. I mean, I hate to say it, but this is a world where disease and virus is just, there's no controlling it. There's no knowing what virus or what disease is going to mutate. The fact of the matter is the main spread of the virus to chickens is that wild waterfowl would have to come in contact with them. In a coop, that is highly unlikely. Not only that, but in order for another citizen to get it, they'd have to come handle the chickens. And if you don't like chickens, you're not going to come into my yard and handle my chickens. The only person that would get the disease would be me. And I'm not eating their excrement or butchering them, so that's highly unlikely. The other thing is, when we considered getting chickens, the main reason is that we have a daughter who has food allergies, and she can't go out and do a lot of activities in the community. You can't trust other citizens to not bring peanuts to environments or put eggs in their baked goods or whatever. Even coming here today, I mean, she's worried about walking in this building because maybe one of you have ate a peanut butter sandwich before we came in. So in order to give her something to do, we put things in our backyard. We don't have that option to go to a farm and trust what's at that farm. You know, everybody thinks it's so easy to just go out and do, you know, because you can. We can't. And so having these chickens was something that we could do for her so that she has things to do outside, something to look forward to. It's just, and after having them for so long, I mean, I literally was saying at the last meeting, we don't even have the chickens for the eggs. She's allergic to eggs. You know, that's what's funny about it. I mean, you wanted somebody who has chickens. We have chickens and literally live next to a cornfield. The field, the guy has some sort of, I don't even know what it's called, but some sort of zoning thing on the side of our property so that his field, his tractors and things can run over on our property. But a few feet away, I can't have a couple chickens. It just seems backwards to me. I know you say you have to treat everybody the same, but then why can't I put my chickens over in that little zoned area? You know, if he's already using it for farming, doesn't that make sense? Anybody?
Well, Carrie, oh, go ahead, Dan.
Well, I was just thinking if it's okay with that farmer to put them on the farm, you wouldn't be violating the
The
ordinance.
field is there, not the farm.
Well,
It's rented property. I don't even know who rents it.
and check with the farmer and the renter.
And then I have to take my daughter to the farm where I can't trust what's on the farm.
Well, I'm not suggesting that you take it on the other side of the farm. And on the other side of the fence might be acceptable. You're not in the city limits, I don't think, then. I don't know. I don't know where the city boundary is relative to what you're talking about.
It literally is along the edge of our property and it's a field.
Then you could probably, if the farmer is okay with it, stick it in his field.
I don't see that happening.
Well,
Well, Carrie,
I'm just saying that, you know, there are things that don't make sense with this and that, you know, the wordings, and you're saying that your attorney says that because it doesn't explicitly state something, it doesn't explicitly state that I can mow my lawn on Wednesdays either.
you know, Carrie, yours is a case that, you know, it's an emotional one. I see the pictures here. I see where you're right up against a farm. But I'll use your own words kind of against you in the sense that you said you can't trust other citizens with your daughter and running around. We don't have the luxury of granting you, which based on where your house is, and you're right up against a farm field that they spread manure on and everything else, I'm sure. This would be an instance where I could see that this isn't going to be posing any problem. But the fact of the matter is now in my neighborhood or Chuck's neighborhood, our lot lines are literally 20 feet away from us, and I can't trust other citizens, just like you can't trust them with your daughter and peanuts and egg allergies, that they're going to be as responsible as you are, and they're going to take care of these animals as well as you are, or their situation is going to be as good of a situation to hold a coop as yours is.
But I don't see how everybody's figuring that there's going to be suddenly 500 citizens that are going to pop up with coops.
I'm not saying there's going to be 500. I don't want one in my backyard, you know, I don't. And that's what Dave's heard, and that's what the majority of it. I mean, here's more letters right here that were against chickens. I've got plenty of emails that are against chickens. They don't want to hear them. They don't want to smell them. You know, we just heard that there was, their decibel of chickens is between 60 and 70, which is a human voice. Well, guess what? When that first spring day, when my windows go open in my bedroom and the lot line's 20 yards away, I don't want to hear chickens or even my neighbor's voice at 5 a.m. sitting out there holding a conversation on his cell phone when it's 5 a.m. and I'm still trying to sleep and the sun's just coming up. I don't want to hear chickens out there waking me up every morning.
That's funny because I never hear my chickens at that time. But you know what I hear out of my neighbor when I open my windows up? I'm hearing the snow, well, not in the summer, not snow blowers, but the pressure washer going and the motorcycles revving. And there's I don't know what kind of town, what part of town you're living in, but there's no quiet like that.
Well, no, it's no different with a barking dog. You can read in the paper every week that there's complaints every week in the police reports on barking dogs too. I agree with that. Again, it's yours is a situation that, yeah, you know, to be honest with you, I would feel comfortable with this. And I don't even know if there's a conditional use permit or something that you could carve out to give people that on an individual basis. Because if anybody had a good standing or a good argument to keep chickens, would be you, based on where
Well, I
your
mean, I
house
had already
is.
talked to Ken about possibly applying for variance because of that sort of thing. I don't know what the requirements are for that. I'm just, you know, in general, though, it's hard to believe that with having such a farming community where we still are in the position where we're honoring all these tractors and we're having this celebration of all this farm, you know, farm. It's a joke. It really is. If we're done with that, we shouldn't be celebrating that anymore. If it's over and done with, what is that all about? Because it looks like just a drink fest. I mean, that's really all it's come to in this town. So.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dan Metzdorf. I live at 1411 7th Street Northeast. I was at the planning meeting a few weeks ago and got up and spoke about our chickens that we have and heard the other people talk about, you know, their experiences and what it means to them. And I believe that, I mean, and one person said it's just, the talk about all this is kind of silly that, you know, it's gone on this far that we have to decide whether or not to allow them. And I think there's other, I mean, it is kind of silly that people being worried about things, there's a lot of other things in New Prague to be worried about other than somebody having chickens, you know, and I feel if the complaints, are there any, you know, how many documented complaints do you have against them versus having dog complaints or, you know, other noise complaints or just, you know, something like that. But I think there's other things too and you know, to be looked at and stuff. But I feel it is ridiculous that it's gone this far. If it would be made possible that there would be permits, or a person would have to have a permit to have them, you know, that would be fine as long as it's not an outrageous, you know, dollar amount that that would be, you know, to have them or whatever. But I just, you know, the kids love them and people find it interesting, you know, that you have chickens, raise chickens and stuff. They're not for anybody's, you know, profit. You know, nobody's making any money off of them. You know, they're just more considered pets than anything. And if they're not considered, or if they're considered a farm animal or animals in general that wouldn't be allowed, well, then I guess you can't allow dogs or cats or, you know, birds or anything like that. And I know there's people, and, you know, you can ask around, there's a lot of other kind of animals that people have in their homes and their yards and stuff. I don't think, you know, chickens are too threatening, so I just, you know, we're just, you know, asking for, you know, somebody to think about that. I think a fair way, if this doesn't get resolved or it has to be, you know, looked at further, a fair way is, you know, hold an election. People call in, people sign petitions about that, you know, they feel it's okay to have them or whatever. Why don't we have an election? Why doesn't everybody in New Prague that lives in town, yes or no, allow them or not? Instead of having 4 or 5 people make a decision for, you know, the whole city. And I feel that, you know, when it comes to voting on things or feelings and stuff, 4 or 5 people are going to they're going to stick together and, you know, because they don't want to, you know, upset their friends that they voted, you know, a different way or something. So I feel a fair way would be to, you know, a yes or no vote. Pick a day and, you know, go at it that way. That'd be a fair way to do it.
Well, we kind of, in theory, do it by electing our elected officials. Now, obviously, you're not going to like what every elected official says yes or no on things at the city level, state level, federal level. But if you would want any issue that would have to go to a referendum, nothing would get done. So in theory, when you vote for your elected officials, you basically are doing what you're saying. You're letting people say yes or no to who are making the decisions for the city. And that's just really how our democracy works.
Right.
You know, you can't, you know, you would never get anything done if we had to go to vote on anything that was an emotional or something that, you know, would cause a lot of anguish either way.
Right.
You know, so, I understand what you're saying, but, you know, it just is not a feasible thing to do in regards to that. You know, and you know, as I look at it as being the mayor, I mean, I try to take the emotion out of decision making, and I try to look at what's good for the common good of the community. I don't look at individuals. I don't know you. I don't know, you know, people. I know council people, but it's not like we party together and we say, okay, we're all going to vote on this one way or another. I mean, we all have to vote our conscience, and I think I'm proud of this council has been doing that since I've been mayor, and you know, you're not going to always like the things that we pass, but you know, it's just the way our society is been set up. So, you know, I know it's hard when it is an emotional thing. Decisions that aren't emotional, it's very easy to make. But again, when I read the facts and look and talk to people, you know, I look at what's good for the common good of the whole community, not a certain specific area, you know, and that's the way I view my position. So, anything else?
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Ryan Hoskin. I live on 118th 4th Street Southwest, and I am glad some of you weren't with the Founding Fathers, but that was some of the Founding Fathers' concerns when they, some of them felt that citizens were irresponsible, so therefore the power of the government shouldn't rest with the people. And I can guarantee that some of your views of it's for the whole community versus individual freedoms, probably I know I am personally happy that our Founding Fathers didn't feel that way, that they thought that it was individual freedoms were more important, that oversight of government was, government should be limited, that a council shouldn't be able to decide every single aspect of your life. And I understand that, you know, I mean, for example, this November we do get to vote again on our elected officials, but when it comes to items where we've seen that there is a public opinion on things, I do know that then that's the time you need to reach out and get more. And at this time, from my perspective, I've seen that there's more people for it than against it, and those people who are for it are willing to present their information, where those, what I hear is hearsay. Oh, I've talked to a bunch of people that are against it. Okay, well, I've talked to 1,000 people that are for it. If we're going to play a game like that, I'd be more than happy to hear the other side of people why, and I've heard some of your opinions of why you're against it. I feel sorry for those that live in fear of viruses and of mutating and such. But it really does, I think it comes down to where do we stop? I guarantee that probably this year, each of you have broken one of the laws that you guys sustain. For example, when it snows, and that skiff of snow stays on your sidewalk for more than 24 hours. I mean, I know we have regulations on how long the grass should be. Well, we should kick those people out of New Prague then, because they're bad for the all of New Prague, right? I mean, I do find it interesting. I'm all about individual freedoms, not what's good for the common good, because the Nazis themselves thought it was the common good for their communities to round up the Jews and put them in concentration camps, because it was for the common good. But I have ancestors, I have friends that have served and died for this country for our individual freedoms. And that's really what you need to be thinking about, is that sometimes we skew when we do regulations that it's not a matter of, that it's just a simple thing. But oftentimes it really comes down to, what do we believe? Do we believe that it's the government's responsibility to monitor and control, or are we in support of individual freedoms? Chickens are domesticated animals, but if it wasn't about chickens, I plan on participating more in these meetings, because I feel when I see community leaders start saying that they're doing things for the common good, for me as an American, that raises alarms that individual freedoms are going to be destroyed. Thomas Jefferson once said that as soon as someone's willing to sacrifice a little bit of freedom for security, they deserve neither and will lose both. And I definitely believe that is true. That as soon as and we've seen that in America, as we have given up certain of our freedoms for security purposes, or for what sounds good at the time, that we have lost personal freedoms with more government oversight. But that's my concern as a citizen, is that we're starting to make so many regulations. I understand that some of you have smaller lots and you don't want chickens, and that's perfectly fine. But if we're going to go with what's fair to everybody, then we should get rid of dogs and cats too, because they carry the same amount of virus and disease. They're noisy in the morning. Every single morning I have a dog that barks about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I wake up every single morning. But that's part of life. You don't hear me coming and calling you and complaining about my neighbor's dog. No, because my neighbor's, he's a good guy. Same for the person next to me, where they let their dog out and their dog happens to run into my yard and does its business. But I really would like for the city councilman to think, because I guess it is perfectly fine if you are a socialist person and you believe that government oversight is the most important thing, then you can, and you don't believe in individual freedoms, and that's the way you should vote, because this is America. But as an individual, I'm going to raise as much awareness about who we've elected and their positions, as I think every individual should, because, we probably all know someone that has fought and died for this country, that have lost arms and limbs for individual freedoms, so that we don't have governments that look into every aspect of our personal lives. So that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the council?
Yeah, I have one other thing. A fellow called me up Sunday, I believe, and said, I am against having chickens. I said, would you please show up at the council meeting on Tuesday? He said, well, I have something going on Monday, but I don't think I do on Tuesday. I says, please be there, because I didn't think I'd be able to make it. Well, he gave me all the reasons, and I will try to share with you what he told me. He grew up on a farm, not too far from here. Now, they didn't have 4 or 6 chickens. They had a lot of chickens. How many, I have no idea. I didn't ask him. He now lives in town, and he says, one of the first things he told me was that, you know, people have chickens, and then pretty soon they forget about the chickens. Winter comes along, they have them in their coop or their garage or wherever it is, and come one spring we noticed, well, where are the chickens? We didn't see them, so they assumed that they were in the chicken coop or the garage. Well, when the snow was all gone, they found the chickens in their garden. The chickens had frozen to death, and so what did they do? Threw them over the fence into this person's garden. He said, you know, you don't think they don't have diseases that they can't spread? He says, damn chickens always have lice. You have a chicken coop, pretty soon you have mice. You get mice there, pretty soon they're trying to get into your garage or your house. He says, do they spread disease? Oh, yes, they do. He says that we had disease on ours, in our chickens, that at times spread to us. Now I can see you shaking your head, Carrie, I think. That is his opinion. He grew up on the farm. And I guess we all, as most of you said, have our own opinions. We're not up here to, just because 4 or 5 couples come before us and are united, that we're going to listen to you 4 and not other people. We do hear from other people. I have been one who has had to try to smooth somebody who was really upset because their chickens, their neighbors, the chickens were going into their yard and scratching whatever in their garden. At any rate, I appreciate all your opinions, but please understand that sometimes government does make rules because we've had others complaining. In this case, the rule is simply better meant to define what farm animals are and what we want to break, or what we want to clear up. That's the purpose of this ordinance. I
Okay.
think I'm done.
Any other comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance as printed.
Second.
I got a motion by Dave Brusick, second by Sean Ryan, to approve the changes to the existing ordinance. Any other further comment? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Jenna, no opposed.
Okay. Passes 4-1. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Next on the agenda,
Just as clarification for those, is that the council is required then to consider this again at the next meeting, where you could consider that for adoption, and then it would have to be published before it would become effective.
right. So basically, we approved the first reading.
You approved the first reading this evening.
Right. Okay. Mike, are you taking the next one?
Yes. We've received a request from the owners of, let's make sure I get this correct here, Karaoke Inc., doing business as JT's Hideaway, that following the discussion that the council had on this liquor license violation matter in December, city staff prepared a letter and a citation that was sent to the owners of the liquor license that I referenced. They were given the opportunity to request an administrative hearing and an opportunity to appear before the council, and so that's really where we're at tonight. I'll wait to go into the details of my materials, subject to giving them the opportunity. Harry Biley and Jeff Jensen here this evening, and so it would be their opportunity now to come forward and to provide the council with whatever information they would like to have you consider before you take final action on their administrative citation.
Mike, I'm going to recuse myself because I do business with JT's Hideaway.
Okay.
So should I step down from the podium or just not vote, or?
You should not vote, and you should not participate in any discussion, but you don't have to step down.
Thank you.
On December, I think it was 21st, we had our initial meeting where the disciplinary action was going to be recommended by the council. And at that time, we were not actually given any kind of opportunity to explain or try to shed any light as far as why we were put in the position that we were put in. What the issue was is we have our insurance coverage, which was due at the same time. And the top copy is our New Prague utilities bill, which came into us at that same time. And I think you'll notice that our average bill is around between $500 and $700 a month. This one was $1,300 because of a leak or something that we had at the time. And I had one option, and that was pretty much to pay it off, or I was being threatened to be shut off. At that same time, our mortgage payments due and the liquor liability was due. So I was forced to make a decision. The second item that I got there is what our daily sales had been for that time period. On the bottom is our monthly revenue that we've experienced. So we had an option. It was either, we called New Prague Utilities, and the option for us was pay half of it right there on the spot and then another half a week later. Didn't really solve our problem. So the decision we had to make was pay our liquor liability insurance and try to serve customers in a dark bar without power and water and heat. Or we pay the utilities bill and hope to God we have a big weekend and maybe get the check in enough time before the insurance company sends a letter to lapse us and Chief Garais comes over and takes our liquor license. We knew that was a possibility, hoping on what we were going to do for sales. Based on things that were going over in our December 21st meeting, we had a letter from Chief Garais and Mike Johnson, which basically explained their research or their confusion as to why they weren't notified by the insurance company at the time it lapsed. And based on the council's recommendation, it was a $2,000 fine and 6-day suspension, depending on what resources were expended by trying to determine all this. And my question is, the notification from the insurance company to the city, I mean, I don't know anywhere in my agreements or my liquor license or my responsibilities where if I can't pay the liquor liability that I'm to contact the city immediately and let them know. And I asked when I sent the letter in for the hearing, I asked for the city administrator to provide a breakdown of the costs involved, because that was contingent on what our penalty was. And based on the letter from Chief Garais and the letter from Mike Johnson, a lot of the research and things that were going on were basically with the insurance company trying to determine why they were not notified. So my question is I understand the position we're in. I'm not happy about it, but how is it that I'm going to be penalized further for an activity that is out of my control and not something that I'm responsible to communicate? And in the letter that we have, based on what the actions are tonight, it's referred to, is it this one? Yes, the administrative penalty has second violation on there, has $2,000 fine, 6-day suspension in accordance with city ordinance, section 110.23. Second violation according to that ordinance is $1,000 and a 2-day suspension. And I know there's variances and there's deviations and things that we talked about at our first meeting. Basically, I'm here to say that's what I was up against. That was the decision I had to make. And the chief, as far as I know, when he got his letter of lapse, he came in and secured the liquor license immediately upon receipt of the letter. So as far as at that point, that's our impact. That's what we did. And we did what we could to re-enable it, reinstate it right away as fast as we could. All the other stuff on here as far as the research as to why the city wasn't notified properly, I don't know why. But a lot of time went into it, and that was based on what the city council was going to recommend as my penalty, was based on the insurance company not notifying the city. So I guess I'm asking you to consider that. And it was kind of curious because I don't know where I read it, but I think somewhere it said New Prague Utilities was contacting residents to let them know of excessive usage or increased usage, and informing them. I don't know why, but our bill skyrocketed. That's huge. Our average was already passed within our first week and a half of the billing cycle. I got a pink sticker on my invoice. No phone call. Nobody stopped by and said, hey, something's going on here. But I was hand-delivered a letter over the bar in the middle of the day saying that they were going to shut me off if I didn't have it paid. That was the determining factor of why we are where we are today. That's what I wanted you to see.
Okay. Mike, I just have a question for you. In the code 110.23, it does say second violation. Now, I wasn't here on the 21st.
Yes.
I have to excuse myself. So I'm just, maybe this was answered before, but it does say second violation, 1,000 plus 2-day suspension in the ordinance, or?
Those are and I'll let Bob talk about it if I'm not able to correctly do it here, but basically the council adopted some number of years ago what they considered to be the general standards of what violations would be for either the first, second, third, or fourth offense. If you read within that section, under section 110.23A, number 2, is these penalties are presumed to be appropriate for every case. However, the city may deviate in an individual case where the city finds that there exists substantial reason making it more appropriate to deviate. When deviating from these standards, the city must provide written findings that supports the penalty. So the council does, based on taking a look at all of the facts, have the abilities to look at increasing the fine versus and/or the suspension as to what would normally be the second violation within a 36-month period of time. And that's what I came to the council for discussion last December in taking a look at this matter. And the direction from the council was to take a look at, number one, there was discussion that evening for something substantially more than the 2-day. I think Councilmember Brusick was talking upwards of 30 or 31 days, and so it was batted around, should it be somewhere in between there, and I think I brought the council back to some discussion within that realm of 6 days. But in the violation of that fine is that I believe it was Councilmember Jurek that as part of the consideration of the discussion is that if there were additional legal fees incurred by the city as a result of having to address this matter, and as Mr. Jensen points out, is that in what I provided to the council with the additional billing that we had from the attorneys, it wasn't to find out why the insurance company didn't notify us, is that was all part of dealing with the issue when we received the notice on December 9th that there was no insurance, on how to deal with that issue, and then the follow-up as to where do we really need to go with this and how do we handle this in light of what was authorized versus what the city code requires, is that as soon as we discovered and determined that there was not the proper liquor liability insurance in place, immediately that morning, after consulting with the city attorney, was to draft a letter to revoke immediately the liquor license for JTs. Technically, that liquor license should have been continued to have been revoked, even though they were able to provide proof of insurance later that afternoon. I believe, Jim, they provided you. I was out of town and unavailable, but they were able to provide proof of insurance. However, that should have been remained in a revocation state until the council had a hearing, which should have been granted within 10 days had that been requested. And so this was the first time we had this, and in consultation with the city attorney as we digested it afterwards, is that in the way that we responded with our correspondence, is that I don't believe the city attorney thought that they were going to act that quickly and be able to get the insurance. But technically, it should have been remained in a revocation status until you had a chance to have proof to you at a subsequent council meeting. But we allowed it to go back into action, and probably improperly so, but we did. And so in taking a look at that, the fact that, and this is the first I guess I had heard of the utility issue, and I'm not knowledgeable of that I can't comment on that. I assume Bruce, as the general manager, could if you ultimately wanted information in that regard, but was trying to take a look at the fact as to where do we go, how do we deal with this, how do we handle it under the liquor ordinance, and what ought to be done. So it wasn't spending any significant time taking a look at what do we have to do with the insurance company. In fact, I still haven't spent time really taking a look at that at this stage of the game, but it was working with Scott, taking a look at what we needed to do then and what was going to need to be done as a follow-up in preparation for when I brought this issue to you, as you recall, at the, I believe, December 21st council meeting. It was trying to get prepared and what the options and the alternatives were that you were going to have in that respect. So it wasn't spending time taking a look at why we didn't get notice from the insurance company.
But in the letters, it says you're contacting the insurance company and speaking to insurance reps.
In starting to take a look at that, what we wanted to try to verify and to determine is that in the fact that the notice that we had, as it said, it was canceled on November 9th, and we received notice on December 9th. In taking a look at that, as I began to try to look at factually the circumstances of what we have here, was trying to determine how could we go through a process to ultimately be able to prove that they actually had been operational for that 30-day window of time. And that's where I turned the matter over to ultimately to Police Chief Garais to do an investigation. And so we were trying to determine what steps do we need to take to factually pull together their information to determine that not only was there, that there was an operation of the business for 30 days without the liquor license, based on whatever circumstances existed, which are uncontrollable or really unrelated to the fact that state statutes require you to have liquor liability insurance. You don't have the discretion to operate a liquor business without liquor liability insurance. There is no provision based on whatever circumstances and balancing, and I can empathize with the challenges that they had regarding what Jeff just described. But I don't have the abilities to take that into consideration in dealing with that. That should have been and was an immediate revocation, and then it was allowed to go back into place. And so how do we deal with that going forward and determine that there was the insurance, and did they knowingly do it versus what happened, and how do we try to approach that, and how do we investigate that? And so that was turned over to the police chief ultimately for his background investigation that I ultimately used in making a final decision. And what I came to you at was in December is, where do you want me to go with this, or how do you want me to take a look at this? Do you want to take a look at the standard 2-day suspension and $1,000 fine, or based on what we preliminarily had discovered and found, what was your inclination of where we ought to go with that? So there is no city staff time in this that that because our and we vacillated with that in trying to determine whether there should or shouldn't have been, but in consultation with the city attorney, his advice to us was basically to stop it at the $2,000 limit. That administrative secretarial time, my time, the police time, we didn't add to that or bill that. Maybe a discretionary decision on my part, but our costs were going to be paid for whether we spent time on this or something else. And I only felt it was going to further exacerbate the situation that we had in here. And so, it wasn't my intent to put the business out of business, but there was a flagrant and blatant decision made regarding the operation of a business for 30 days without the appropriate insurance. And so that's what went into that with the review with the city attorney.
Chuck, you were not here for that, and to maybe elaborate a little bit on what Mike just said is that when they came before us, it was basically Ms. Bealey that talked to us. And then, if I remember the conversation adequately, that the reason it was not paid is, again, it's Jeff said it, but it was basically because, yes, they didn't have the money, but also because when she was writing out the checks, that the malpractice was just either buried under other bills or just forgot about it. That's the way I remember it, and maybe other council persons will correct me, but I think that's pretty much what I remember. What we told Mike was that we wanted to have him bill for whatever costs it was to the city. What he has charged you is less than what our attorney's fees are. Those are almost $2,200. It was my recommendation that because you were operating from November 9th through December 9th, plus still operating until we had our meeting, I think it was what, December 27th?
21st.
21st. You were way beyond operations when you shouldn't have been open at all. I proposed 30 days. Actually, that should have been about 40 days, 45, somewhere in there. So I brought up the 30-day figure, maybe it was 31, I don't remember. But we came to an compromise at 6 days. The reason we came to a 6-day figure was because we knew, after one of you two had said, that we are not open on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
No, during that time of the lapse, we were only closed for Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Okay, so according to our documents, you had to be, the day count would have started on a Friday. So when I added this up, if we had 6 days, you would have been closed for, on our account, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, you are closed anyway. So in effect, it was only a 3-day closure on the city's resolution. I could have said, let's make it a 10-day. I could have come up with a compromise of 10 days, knowing then that you would have been closed 2 weekends, not 1. So I think Mike is giving you a good deal by not trying to figure out how much staff time was put on this issue. We way bent our requirements in that we're not forcing you to close for the 40 or 45 days that it calls for in the ordinance or state law, whichever it is. Again,
But
from
where does
November
I don't
9th
see where it says that.
in is it the state that says that because you do not have, you should have had insurance from November 9th until you pay it up. In your case, you paid it up until December 9th. That was 30 days you should have been shut down, period, through no fault of the city. That was because you did not have your insurance paid. That's not our law. That's either state or federal law. Am I right, Bob?
Yeah, you can't be open if you don't have the insurance. That's the correct statement, yes. And that is.
Then by our ordinance, we cannot reapprove your license until such time as you have the document in your hand that you now have, or the city has proof that you have malpractice insurance, and then until the council meets and we can approve your license. That's where the December 24th date comes in, which is 15 days, so it was actually 45 days you should have been closed when you weren't. Now, I understand, just looking at these numbers here, that your business is not probably as profitable as you'd like. And that puts constraints on what you can and can't do. I'm not an accountant, but I do have a little bit of accounting sense. A little bit. But that just tells me that you're a little shaky water. We can't help that. There's nothing we can do to solve that problem for you.
And I found it very calculating that after our December 21st meeting, it was pretty much put down exactly what the city council recommended, what Mike Johnson even said he was going to go for. I mean, we knew that it was going to be the recommendation of a $2,000 fine and a 6-day closure. We didn't get the letter from the city until January 22nd, 30 days after the meeting, which puts it in a very, based on what the wording is, it puts our fine due at the same time our liquor license is due. Also puts a closing there. So it will close the business.
Any other questions, comments?
Can we postpone the fine, or does the fine need to be paid? Can we give them 30 days in addition to pay that, so it's not in line with?
Well, from the council taking the action is that they have 30 days to pay that. And whether that would have been earlier, that in trying to make sure that this was assembled properly and meeting with the city attorney to put this up, is it took some time to do this properly.
But the 30 days will put them into That's what he's
Same
saying.
renewal.
Yeah, the renewal is end of March, Mike?
Well, the submittal of the liquor license materials for this next year, I believe, are due this Friday.
This week,
Oh,
next
see
week.
what I know. And so if we enacted, then it'd be 30 days.
We've got 30 days from today, you're taking the action tonight to pay the fine, yes.
Okay. And what is the liquor license? Is that 1,500?
3,100.
Mary Jo, the liquor license is 2,700, the Sunday liquor is,
Putting a lot of pressure on you, Mary Jo.
It includes Sunday liquor,
Yeah,
dance
Sunday-
license,
and offset.
and off sale.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I guess, look for a motion to,
What I'd like you to do that the city attorney provided, and I'll let Bob walk you through it, is that, not knowing exactly what action the council would take, is that Scott prepared a resolution. I'll let Bob walk through that. He was involved with the city attorney, and
Yeah, I worked with Scott this afternoon in terms of preparing a resolution that confirms the council's action with regard to this review pursuant to the ordinance. The purpose of the resolution is to identify the background supporting the decision of the council and the facts that support the deviation from the ordinance normal penalty, and then does uphold the original citation and previous actions taken by the city, and requires the payment within 30 days. We did draft it, if you're looking at the second page, in case there was any deviation or change from the original recommendation, that we could put those in here. But depending on what the council does, if it simply approves the action previously imposed, this resolution would memorialize that and start the time for fine. And the reason we're doing a recommendation is to have the findings for the record and to have a record of what was imposed by the city council, rather than having a motion.
okay. So I guess I will look for a motion to approve the resolution. Is that right, Bob?
Correct.
We need to clarify, though, what it should
the
say.
fine and/or the
Okay.
days of the suspension.
Is it just me, or does it seem like deviation means increase? Every time you say deviation, it's about increasing.
No, the language,
I'm just,
standard, if there were no other factors that the council considered, would be a 2-day suspension and the $1,000 fine. That, as you recall at the beginning of my remarks, I read the portion of the city code that allows you to consider whether that, whether you should deviate from that, that there exists substantial reason making it more appropriate to deviate from the 2-day suspension and the $1,000 fine. That's the deviation.
Okay. Any comments in regarding that? I know, David, you stated your comments. Any?
I stated what I recall from the
Right.
previous meeting, and I would still state that based on that, yes, our expenses well exceed the 2,000. I would stick, my opinion is I would stick to the 2,000. I would also stick to the 6-day suspension, which in effect is a 3-day suspension.
that was then, though. We're open Tuesdays and Wednesdays now, we're just closed on Mondays. As you can see in the daily sales, it's just, During that time, we were only open Monday, or we were only closed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Well, I guess I'm going by what I said originally, but if other members want to change that, that's fine with me.
I agree with sticking with the original, the 6 days and the 2,000. I think I agree with everything you recapped from our December meeting, from the information they provided us in the going forward. I think it's unfortunate, but
The whole thing is unfortunate, but
so I would agree with the $2,000 and the 6-day suspension.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, I guess I'll look for a motion to approve the resolution with the 6-day suspension and the $2,000 fine.
I move a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, I got a motion by Dave Brusick, seconded by Jenna Tuma. Any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0, with Sean Ryan being abstained. Okay,
Can we request that the closure begin, since we're open now, can it begin tomorrow?
Mike, what's,
Under the city ordinance,
Has to start on Friday, I think.
correct, that as is noted in the materials provided to you, that follows in accordance with 110.23 subsection 3, all multiple day license suspensions shall run consecutively starting on the first Friday following the day of the expiration of the time to request a hearing or following a decision of a hearing, and will begin at 8 a.m. on the first day of the suspension period and ending at 8 a.m. following the last day of the suspension period. So I don't have personal discretion as to when that begins. Under this code section that you have in your liquor ordinance, it would begin this Friday, I believe, 8 a.m. and run until 8 a.m. on Thursday, February.
okay?
I'm sorry, I was just waiting for an answer, because I was asking if,
Yeah.
Why is there a problem with starting it tomorrow, other than
The
Friday?
council, previous councils, in adopting the parameters of how they're going to handle liquor license suspensions, identified language when that specifically is to begin. So unless the council was to formally go through the change in the ordinance, they're held to those requirements as well.
True, yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. I heard,
Yeah, it's
Delay.
not, it's out of our hands, right now, is that's what the current ordinance is starts.
well, after you read that, you read the next paragraph, and I was kind of confused at that, because it sounded like the council could make a decision as far as based on when to start versus 8 a.m., whatever day it is, versus,
It begins on the first day of the suspension period and ending at 8 a.m. following the last day of the suspension period, but that it begins running consecutively starting on the first Friday following the day of the expiration of the time to either request the hearing or following a decision of a hearing. So tonight is the decision of the hearing, so they don't have the luxury that, taking a look at it, so the
so
council.
it's Friday.
It's fixed.
Yeah.
I didn't have any discretion to recommend any other alternatives on that front.
Okay. Next on the agenda, I think we have Tom and Wade here from the Golf Board.
Good evening. We are here to discuss the potential capital purchase for 2016, I think, as a follow-up to our budget discussions earlier this year, or earlier in November, I believe. Over the last couple months, in our board meetings and a special meeting a couple weeks ago. We've had Jeff and Wade hash through kind of our real needs and prioritize and go back and do some due diligence for the next few years. And what we've prioritized for year 2016 capital purchase is 2 greens mowers. And I believe you've got a packet in front of you of the, actually what we're looking at purchasing. This was just put in front of my eyes tonight, but I think it's pretty straightforward. Jeff has made a recommendation on the second sheet as far as what we're calling option B. 2 Toro greens mowers, which are going to end up at a total cost somewhat below what we were projecting for a bond amount. So that's always good. But there's a couple things that are going into the greens mower purchase, and the timing of it is if we can complete it in the next, upcoming month or two and take delivery in the next 2 months, we can approximately save about $5,000 to $7,000 of maintenance costs that Jeff would have to do and complete before the new year as far as parts and labor to bring the existing greens mowers up to speed. So we would have some savings there. And then obviously you can see, I believe the last part of our handouts are capital equipment list. Both of the existing greens mowers are reaching their useful life expectancy, and for us to get any trade-in value, and these are really 2 pieces of machinery that are kind of the lifeblood of the golf course. We've prioritized them as really the most important pieces we want to take care of in the next few years. We're getting our backs up against a wall with that cushion we have as far as the capital, or as far as the cash input that the city is giving to the golf course for capital expenditure, debt, and new purchases. But we feel this expense in 2016 is going to be important and something we want to move forward with. So that's, I think, where we're at on that. Wade, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or?
I don't have anything to add. In terms of the savings, we've already, budgeted for the labor. That would be Jeff or Mike's labor. So it would be material savings in terms of purchases for the repair of the existing 2 mowers.
I see the trade-in. No, which option are you looking at?
I think if you see on the front page, there's option A with groomers, and then there's option B without, and we're actually looking at option B and item number 1, the Toro models. Option B does not include the groomers, but I think Jeff, I believe, had a little write-up that the additional cost of the groomers was not, it was cost prohibitive and did not make sense. So I guess I'm not a great groomers machinery mind, but I'm assuming I'd go with what Jeff is suggesting there, and is obviously a economic decision, and in the sense he was saving the city some money there.
And there's not any use for any of the old greens mowers that you?
He does turn the old greens mowers into other utility equipment mowers that he mows tees with.
But aren't we trading those in, though?
The trade-in value is $3,500 right now, is what he's getting from Toro. What he's trading is the 2 Jakes. He might think it makes more sense to keep those so that he can trade out parts and use some of those pieces out of those 2 mowers or other mowers that have similar vintage. Those mowers can mow tees around greens, things of that nature.
So what you're saying, you're probably not going to trade those in?
don't know that for a fact, I guess. I talked to Jeff today to walk through this. That's not something I talked to him about.
I recall from the meeting, it was they were moving some of them to the driving range, and then they kind of rotate those out to auction, so they kind of have a tiered movement of equipment of kind of from the golf course to the driving range or to the lesser need, and then the ones that were in that role then get retired.
Okay.
So these specifically probably won't be retired, but a couple of units were going to be.
Oh, okay.
In my review with Jeff today, he was not recommending that we retain the two existing, the 2008 and the 2006, the existing Jacobson greens mowers, that his recommendation is we trade them in.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't ask him that question today.
Why is there such a spread between the trade-in values between the two companies?
He's trading Jake's in, or Jacobson mowers in,
Oh, so
and the
they get-
Jacobson dealer can turn around and retrofit those and still make money on a used sale, but he'd have to replace all the reels, all the guts of those 3 reel components to make them saleable again.
Okay.
They would have expertise in that and then be able to offer that for something quite a bit less than a new machine.
A couple of things sometimes come into play in this, Sean, that in some cases they play games between what their new pricing is versus what the trade-in value is, just because they can. But secondly, and it is, and taking a look at it, is that the existing mowers are Jacobson mowers, and Toro is inclined to give us a whole lot for our Jacobson mowers because they have a tough time peddling, albeit Toro peddling Jacobson mowers.
Sure.
But that's why it was important, as we laid this out, trying to give you the benefit of the information, what is the straight-out purchase without the trade-in, and you can see what the trade-in is, and then the price after the trade-in, so that we could evaluate that, and so you can see that in those differences, it's quite obvious what's occurring. And I think Jeff, in my meeting with him earlier this morning after the quotations had come in, was trying to take a look at that there's a significant difference, and the reason he's recommending that hybrid mower a little bit more is that that it's a gas tractor with those electric motors that power the cutting units as compared to the standard greens mower, which will also be a gas tractor, but they have hydraulic motors powering the same cutting units that they would no longer have the hydraulics involved in it, that it's more of an electrical process. And even though the price is a little bit more, he thinks that that's better because they weren't able to control operationally with the last feature he's got on Y he's looking at B is the throttle control on the operation of the two different mowers, that the Jake's was controlled by an onboard computer versus and cause some problems that way versus the operational control that they can get out of the Toro. So he recognizes that there was a price difference, and in trying to weigh that, that's why he had tried to look at a couple of alternatives to either include or not include the groomers to help differentiate it and give them some better options from a pricing standpoint.
Are you guys looking then to spend the remaining 80,000?
No, I think we'd want to bond for the value of what we're buying.
That was a decision by the golf board coming in. As you can see, the bid price, not including any trade-ins, both would have exceeded the 80,000, and so there was a guesstimate of what the trade-in value was versus the cost new. And the time that I think the presentation was made is that his best estimate, subject to receiving quotations, was give or take about 40,000 a unit. And so where it comes in less, we'd still have issuance costs that if you issue the 68,000, it'd be the 68 plus whatever the issuance cost is in the, would be a small piece with the other work that we're looking at doing with the utilities and the sanitary sewer replacement main by the school here later this year, that we would add all of it together in our bonding package. But so there'd be a small uptick from the 68,000 to whatever the related proportionate issuance cost might be. So it would not be the full 80.
Okay. Any
You're
questions?
probably closer to maybe 70, 71,000 in that sense.
My question is, why didn't we have this information earlier instead of just having 5 minutes to review it?
The challenge in doing that, and you're absolutely correct, I don't like providing or allowing this to come in is that when the golf board took action a week ago last Monday, Jeff was trying to get his materials together, and we gave, a minimum of 10 days to solicit quotations. That pricing put it right on the same time frame that they were coming in to talk before the council. And so the choice is either we try to tie that timing, because in trying to move forward with it is the question whether they incurred $5,000 to $7,000 in maintenance and repairs to the existing equipment, or even if, in taking a look at this, you thought you still needed more information or whatnot, you could table this to March 7th if that was the case. But this was the earliest and the quickest we could get it, based on them having 10 days from when the golf board made the decision last Monday. Normally, we do try to have this to you earlier than this.
Any other comments, questions?
Just got one comment that we've put a lot of money into the golf course over the years on equipment because it's well needed. And as you look at the big picture, or as you go down there, there's more needs than there is money. And so I just want to be transparent that, as we move forward over the number of years, there's going to be at least some consideration of what we need to do with golf carts, if we can figure out a way to fund those in a different way or through bonding. And then just also that the list that we probably have seen for a number of years really doesn't include a lot of the building. It's really only the equipment to the operation to it. So I just want to be transparent in that as we move forward, we may need to be considerate of how the golf course, the needs are coming up in the number ahead. So.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
No.
If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the geo bonding for the Greensmores.
I'll second it.
Who was that?
I'll second.
Oh, second by Jenna. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Are you ready, Glenn?
I am.
Well, let's go.
Public Works Department is in front of you. Have a request to purchase a 2016 pickup, regular cab, 8-foot box with an 8-foot snowplow on the front of it, which would be replacing a 2006 F-350 that we currently have. Also, again, with a regular cab, 8-foot box, and a 8-foot snowplow. We got quotes from a couple of dealers that are in state contract, one local dealer for pickup that is not on state contract. He can only, as in past history, this local dealer can only quote on one model because that's the only model that the manufacturer gives him adequate discounts to be competitive with state contract. Currently in the Public Works budget, we had $32,925 towards the purchase of a new pickup with a plow on the front of it. Again, we looked at GMC and Ford. We also did look at Dodge, state contract, but the Dodge base price was higher with no added options to it, so we didn't even include it in this memo at all. The contract the capital price that we had in capital budget was considerably higher than what the bids came in at, and much to everybody's surprise, the suppliers back in August, all of them, the plow suppliers, the truck suppliers, were all saying, figure on it for sure a 6, probably 8% increase on all these prices. So that didn't happen. It's good for us, but that is why you see a discrepancy between what we had budgeted in that account to what we're actually looking at spending for this pickup and snowplow. So it is the recommendation of staff, the City Council authorize the purchase of a 2016 Ford F-350 from New Prague Auto Group and the Western V-Plow from Aspen Equipment for the total price of $25,226.75.
Okay.
If anybody's got any questions, I can try to answer them for you.
You know where the font size on the... on your, when you're printing your memos is? 'Cause
I do.
Could that get any smaller?
No.
He didn't really want,
Show him how to change the font.
he didn't really want you to read it.
I don't know if that'll help.
I had no problems with it. You
I'm
should get
sorry.
LASIK.
I should, yeah,
I actually was trying to get it all on one sheet, and that's why I just doing it that way.
Well, we appreciate you saving that extra piece of paper. So.
Any other comments?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Amy Jurek, second by Sean Ryan. If there's no other further comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Are we doing number 6, Mike? Are you going to take that?
Yep. Closure of your review is a memorandum of understanding, an MOU between Scott County and the city of New Prague for the use and the maintenance of the Scott County's newly developed GIS site address database. Again, this function might have been better coming from Ken because he uses it every day, but I have it, and so the memo from Brad Davis, the Scott County, should be County Planning Manager, outlines and identifies the roles and responsibilities for both the county and the city, the addressing staff who work collaboratively to maintain the GIS database containing address points for mutual benefit. This has been reviewed by Scott and is recommending approval, and so it just clarifies and put into, like I said, an MOU versus a joint powers agreement on how we go about the addressing between the city and the county and how we use their GIS address database to do this.
Yeah. Any questions? Okay. I guess I'll make a motion to approve the agreement.
Second.
Second by Sean Ryan. There's no other comments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Next on the agenda, waiting patiently, and we appreciate it, Mike. I'm sure if you saw, you get to experience some of the stuff that we had on the agenda today.
Yes.
So.
Mayor, I spent 4 years on the Shakopee City Council debating things just like this. It's closest. I think township government's the only closer government to the people than city council stuff. And we got to deal with clucking chickens and barking dogs and neighbors with fences on the wrong side of the line and all kinds of the things I sat and listened to you do tonight. And I've been there, done that, and empathize with you. Then I spent 12 years in St. Paul at the 30,000-foot level, passing the laws and policies that afflict you, then you have to deal with. And now I'm a county commissioner and actually living with some of the laws that I actually voted either for or against just 2 or 3 years ago that are now coming home to roost on the county level, particularly with health and human services and some of the transportation things. But I'm happy to be in front of you tonight talking about agenda item number 7. If you'd like, I'll just go through the request and stand for questions, which is probably the best way to interact with you regarding this request that we're making. I think you see the letter in your packets from Commissioner John Ulrich and myself. We're the 2 Scott County representatives on what's informally known as the Suburban Coalition that's been working for the last 3 years on issues regarding metropolitan governance issues. The genesis of this discussion actually started probably back in the 1960s, shortly after the Met Council was created by an act of the legislature. At that time, it was predominantly focused on the sewer system, because at the time the Clean Water Act was being contemplated. We were getting concerned about the way we were treating our water, the hodgepodge of local waste treatment plants, and how they were functioning, and the expense of building and maintaining those was just getting to be beyond what individual cities and suburbs could afford. So in great controversy, the legislature passed the act that created the Metropolitan Waste Commission, the Metropolitan Council, thinking that we would guide our development. At least somebody could help coordinate it, where the streets would line up at the city borders, and sewer pipes would be built into places where it was actually going to get used instead of have empty fields for years and years, and kind of guide the planning and the growth. The creation of the MUSA line came about because of that, which doesn't affect you down here quite so much yet, but will one of these days in the near future. So the council has had its genesis and has been working for over 50 years now, actually. And there's been a couple of efforts to reform the way it governs us, the way it's created and staffed by policymakers, because it is indeed a policymaking body. The key differentiation is nobody on that board is elected. They're all appointed. They're appointed by one person, that's the governor. They have a constituency of one. The idea back in the 60s was the governor be responsible. We're all neighbors and friends anyhow, so this will work just fine. But as what we call the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO model, began to unfold across the country, there are currently 404 metropolitan planning organizations recognized by the federal government. We actually have 7 of them, excuse me, 7 of them in the state of Minnesota: Duluth, Rochester, St. Cloud, Fargo, Moorhead, Grand Forks, East Grand Forks, and which one am I missing? Duluth Superior, did I mention that? Yeah. There are 7 of them. One of them, it consists entirely of unelected officials appointed by the governor. The other 6 are entirely populated by elected officials, selected from a process that they put together themselves. Of the 404 metropolitan planning organizations in the United States, I believe there's only 2 that do not have elected officials or a preponderance of elected officials. Portland, I think, is about a 50-50 split. Minneapolis is all non-elected officials, no elected officials. We're unique in the nation that way. Indeed, in 1991, when the Ice-T Act was passed, which really kind of codified the federal government's preference for dispensing federal block grants, parks, trails, transit, and transportation monies to the various portions of the country. They made it clear that they were going to distribute that money and those policies only through metropolitan planning organizations, which really kind of codified and made it necessary for everybody to have MPOs, we call them. And it said specifically in the law that they must have a preponderance of local elected officials on their boards, which meant that the Twin Cities Metropolitan Council was out of compliance. Then Senator Durenberger created the Durenberger Amendment, which said, except if there already has been a metropolitan planning organization that's been in effect for more than so many years, that they can continue to function as that if their legislature agrees. And so the legislature quickly agreed. Senator Durenberger stuck the amendment in, which ran until the MAP 21 bill was passed a few years ago, which basically, or specifically said, grandfathering clauses are no longer valid. You must come into compliance, which gave new impetus to the Suburban County Coalition to push on, particularly the Federal Highway Administration, to say, look, we're no longer in compliance. You need to help us change the makeup of the Metropolitan Council and who actually are the policymakers on that board. Now, let me step back for a moment and tell you that this initiative has been going on for quite some time. When I was in the legislature, there was an initiative to do some council reform between the years of 2002 and 2014. I was there. Particularly, though, during the Palente years, there was a feeling that perhaps we had a friend in the governor's office who might help us do some gentle reforms. I remember the first bill we passed staggering the terms of the Met Council, because right now all Met Council members serve coterminous terms with the governor. They're appointed by the governor and serve at the pleasure of the governor. The governor can remove them from office for any cause or no cause at his will, and when the governor's term expires, so do theirs. We said, you know, there needs to be some institutional memory around here and maybe some overlap. That's always a healthy thing for an organization that has so much influence in a region. So we passed a staggered terms bill. Governor Palente promptly vetoed it and sent us a letter that said, this makes the Met Council unaccountable. They are accountable to the governor now, and that's the way we like it. We want it to stay that way. So 2 years ago, my last term in the legislature, we passed almost an identical bill and sent it to Governor Dayton, who promptly vetoed it. And he got out Governor Palente's veto letter, changed the name on the letterhead, and sent us the same veto letter. So apparently governors are pretty fond of the power they have to appoint the Met Council and have it beholden to them. But folks, that kind of underscores and punctuates the need to change the makeup of the Met Council. Now, to be clear, this isn't about eliminating the Metropolitan Council. Our contention is, in a region that's growing as fast as we are, and given Washington's desire to send money to a planning organization in a region, if we eliminated it, we just have to recreate it. But we would certainly constitute it differently, is our contention today, than they did in 1964. We would probably want to have, excuse me, in some fashion, people who actually have election certificates, because the mission and the reach of the Metropolitan Council has morphed quite a bit in the last 50-some years, where we used to just run the sewer plant and send people a bill. Now they're deciding what the sewer access and water access charges would be, where the sewer pipes are going to be, passing policies that in effect have the rule of law, the force of law behind them, and they have the ability to level taxes and fees. And they all do this just as appointed officials. Nobody there has an election certificate. On principle, we think that's wrong. But what's happened lately, particularly since about 2011, when I chaired the Transportation Committee and in the House of Representatives, one of the things that then Commissioner Sorrell did was he instituted a new Metropolitan Highway Inventory Survey. I can't remember exactly the acronym, but basically it was a revisit of the transportation plan, the 2020 plan that the Met Council put out, and looked at how we were going to build out highways and improve the transportation infrastructure, mostly roads and bridges, including some major transit routes. How we were going to do that with a constrained budget. You remember at the time the term that was being thrown around was we were $60 to $80 billion short over the next 20 years. Well, by constraining the budget and doing some other things, they got that down to about a $20 billion shortfall, when that was right after we did the gas tax increase and dedicated the motor vehicle sales tax and a few other things. But one of the offshoots of that was the metropolitan area's transit plan looking forward became very urban-centric. Basically, they took some of the major corridors, or interregional corridors, we used to call them, the IRCs, and they downplayed their significance or removed them from maps altogether. And that's the guiding document that guides federal and state money to our highway infrastructure. And anything basically outside the 494 Beltway was really de-emphasized and downsized in their plan, and everything inside the 494 Beltway, particularly along the rail lines that they want to build, was increased in importance and in stature as it relates to the transportation plan, the latest one being the 2040 move forward or whatever they're calling it. I can't remember at the moment. But you'll see there's been a shift in the focus, which gave new impetus to particularly the 5 suburban counties to say, you know, we really need to have elected officials from the counties and the cities out here where the growth is happening and where the needs are for expanding Highway 13 to 4 lanes in certain areas, replacing traffic signals with interchanges, for instance, like at 41 and 169, just to grab an example. But we found that we were running up against a new almost doctrine, particularly among the staff, the planners and the staff, that said, you know, we have restrained resources. We don't want to keep building sewer pipes to the suburbs. We definitely don't want to keep increasing highway capacity to the suburbs. We're going to focus our investment on reinvesting in the core city and making it a world-class city. So that gave us new impetus to revisit the issue then of who actually sits on the council, who makes these policies, and who has input into making that happen. And then, of course, distributing the money, the policy, the permissions, the sewer pipes, the park money, and so on and so forth that are coming down the pike. To kind of underscore again why this is necessary, we had a partner, Washington County, actually drop out of our participation. Not because they necessarily disagreed with the need to reform how the Met Council is constituted and staffed with policymakers, but because at this moment it's not. It's staff heavy, it's staff driven, and the positions are actually appointed by the governor and are not elected officials and have a particular urban-centric focus. Now, elections have consequences. I get that. We all get that. But in this case, Washington County is looking for something called the Gateway Corridor Transit Corridor, whether it's going to be light rail or whether it's going to be bus rapid transit. They depend a lot on approval from and money from the Metropolitan Council to make that happen. there arose within the Washington County leadership a reluctance to poke the bear, I guess you could say. And I'm here to tell you that that's exactly the reason we need to change the leadership of the Met Council and the way the leadership is constituted. Because if that was county commissioners and mayors and city council members sitting on that policy-making board, staff would never treat another county or another constituency that way. None of us would treat a fellow county commissioner or mayor or city council member that way. I think we would be much more respectful, and that fear that somehow there could be retaliation or that their plan might get a dark review instead of a positive review, that would subside. But it exists. It's the way it is. So Washington County withdrew from the consortium. One other comment about the consortium, because some people say, well, this is a partisan thing. Actually, no, it's not. The first time around, back when I was on the Transportation Committee and in the legislature, there was a 7-county consortium that came up with the pretty nearly the 6 principles that we're asking you to approve tonight that are on about page 6 of your packet, I believe. It included Hennepin and Ramsey. The governor at that time was Tim Pawlenty. The next year, when they met to, and of course that's the one that pushed the staggered terms. That's all we could get through. Governor Pawlenty vetoed it. I told you that story. 2 years later, new governor, new day, we tried to reconstitute the county coalition, and Hennepin and Ramsey dropped out of the coalition. Said, you know what, I think we like things the way they are after all. So now it's the 5 suburban counties, now it's the 4 suburban counties. And we've begun to engage our city friends because the Metropolitan Council directly impacts cities more than counties because it's your comprehensive plans, not New Prague's, I mind you, more about that in a moment. But every city comprehensive plan has to go up to the Met Council and be approved or sent back for correction because it has to comport with the master plan that the Met Council planners have put together for the 7-county metro area. Now, fortunately, there are several border cities like New Prague and Rockford and a couple of towns like Northfield is another one comes to mind that have specifically been exempted by the legislature. You should send your legislators a thank you note for doing that, by the way. You don't have to fall under the purview directly. But there are a couple things I would like to point out to you why I think it would probably be helpful or why you should be thinking about participating. And that has to do particularly with 2 things, parks and transportation. There has been a decided shift at the Met Council in the way they're dispersing money for parks, and I was looking for it. It was right here in front of me just a moment ago. The capital improvement plans for parks is changing. That had nothing to do with anything an elected official did. It's just that the staff decided we really needed to develop the parks, redevelop the parks in the inner city, and that's part of a new policy directive that they have for social equity and social justice issues. That's now a system that the Met Council is paying attention to. We're not sure where that came from. Besides sewers and transit and trails and walkways, parks, highway system, they've now made housing a metropolitan system. I always thought it was a personal responsibility myself, but they presumed authority over housing and housing plans, and the new one that they're dabbling in is called social justice and basically regional equity. None of us are really sure what that means, but you can just ponder that. It doesn't apply to you out here yet, but it does apply to all of us, the rest of us in Scott County. So we're humbly asking for your support and endorsement of the resolution asking for the 6 principles so that we can forward those on to the legislature. There are several bills introduced in the legislature which starts on March 8th. The most prominent one that we're pretty enthused about is a bipartisan effort by Representative Tony Albright from Spring Lake Township and Senator Scott Dibble, a Democrat from South Minneapolis, who's very interested in the Council of Governments model. Now, they're not asking to alter where the Met Council's heading at the moment, but they both see bipartisanly the need to change the makeup of the policymakers on the Metropolitan Council. As we talked about it among ourselves as the county consortium, we could get off into the weeds on how we were going to structure it, who was going to serve, how they were going to get appointed, and all that stuff. One thing we were very clear on, unanimously, we do not want a directly elected Metropolitan Council. That would be almost like a super Senate. It would become very partisan, and you can imagine the money that would be involved in running those campaigns. That's not what we're interested in at all. What we are interested in is a mechanism whereby each county board would select a board member to serve on the Metropolitan Council. And a consortium of cities within each county would, in some mechanism, advance a mayor, a city council member, or someone like that to represent the interests of the cities in a county area as well. We've left the details of that to the legislature. This is, after all, the legislature's creation. They started it. Only they can amend it. Only the Minnesota legislature can change the way the Metropolitan Council is constituted. We have put together several years of effort, hours and hours of meetings, discussion, debate, and input from other points of the compass, and come up with these 6 principles for Metropolitan Council reform that you see on page 8 of your packet. And we're asking for you to pass a resolution of support, which will be forwarded to the chairs of the 2 committees in the House and the Senate that will have jurisdiction over hearing this bill. That's the request. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to stand for questions because there is so much to talk about, but perhaps you already have enough to work with, or perhaps I'm missing something that's a key point that someone would like to talk about.
You mentioned, obviously, New Prague is not part of the Met Council as of today. But you mentioned that we are out of compliance, or the Met Council was out of compliance from federal.
Yes.
Why can't the federal government go in there and say you need to be in compliance or you do not get any money?
Well, Mr. Mayor, that is an attack we have taken. That's a strategy we've employed. We actually have hired a law firm. We, the 4 counties, have hired a law firm to call or actually address the Federal Highway Administration in particular, which dispenses about $70 to $100 million a year through the Metropolitan Council for a host of transportation things, saying we're not in compliance. You can't, according to federal law, do this. You, Federal Highway, compel the Met Council and the Minnesota legislature to come into compliance. And they've given us 9-page letters saying, well, actually you kind of are. We consider it to be the MPO. They point to the grandfathering language in one exchange. We pointed out MAP 21's language that suspended the grandfathering clause, and they came back with another reaction. So there actually is discussion going on between the law firm representing the counties and the Federal Highway Administration asserting this. We haven't gotten any relief yet, and at some point we'll have to go to trial if we go that far. What we're trying to do is use that pressure to tell the Minnesota legislature, you really do need to fix it. That's where the solution lies with the Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, I had asked you earlier, because we are not part of the Metropolitan Council, should we go into this, write a letter of support? Would the Metropolitan Council somehow get back at us and pull us into what's your opinion?
Well, that would be, Mr. Mayor and Councilor Bartusek, that would be exactly what Washington County feared and why they dropped out, because they're looking at hundreds of millions for a bus corridor on 94. Only the Minnesota legislature can pull you into the Met Council's orbit. They can't reach out and get you. So in that regard, no, that's not going to happen. But it's also a reason I would submit why you can stand up and take a stand, because they can't come and get you unless the Minnesota legislature would come and get you. But as your neighbors who do labor under this and are trying to help guide the growth and prosperity of Scott County, we're asking if you would help us and take that stand, particularly because of your unique relationship where you have nothing to fear and you can do us good.
I did go on their website and pull up all the members of it, and to say that it's not political appointment would be a stretch.
Oh, it's a very political organization. Yeah.
Have there been some conversations with the governor? Obviously, if you get legislature, is he already, is the veto inevitable?
We hope not, Mr. Mayor. In this regard, we think that the governor is interested in leaving a legacy, and obviously any legislation that is passed would not take effect until the end of his second term. And it's pretty clear he wants to finish this term and be done and leave a legacy. Reforming the makeup of the Metropolitan Council would be one we think some of his friends on his side of the aisle could help persuade him to see that as a positive thing. One reason we're pretty enthused about Senator Dibble being the author of the Senate version of the bill. So yeah, we think and we may not get all 6 principles in this go-around, but boy, if we can get 3 of them, that's a huge step in the right direction. Even staggering the terms begins to alter the look and feel of the council when you have some carryover from one administration to another.
Any other comments or questions for Commissioner Beard?
Mayor, thank you for your attention to this matter, and council members. We would really appreciate your support, whether you can do that tonight or the March 7th meeting. But notice that the session starts March 8th. The bill will probably be up and heard the following week. So time is important. It is going to be a short and intense session, but we actually have momentum. We have bipartisan support, and after pushing for about 10 years, not the least of which is the legislative auditor got behind us when he did his transit governance report a few years ago and said, you know, it's been a great run, but it's 50 years ago. Folks, it might be time for a little revision, a little remodeling of the structure on how this is appointed. And the principles were actually been embodied in this resolution we're asking for. Actually has the support of the legislative auditor, which is quite a significant development. So thank you for your attention to the matter, and I hope you can support it.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I don't know what everyone's opinion on it, but I think I would like to kind of table that till the March 7th meeting, so we can maybe, talk to some other folks and things like that, other communities and that.
I'm all for it right now, to be honest with you.
I am too. I think that.
In fact, I'll make a motion that we accept it.
Yeah.
The resolution.
Okay, I got a motion by Sean
I'll
Ryan.
second it.
Second by Dave Brusick. Any other further comments?
Yeah, I think that they've given us a lot of information, and one of my major concern is that there's no elected officials on this thing. It's all, governors can do what they want. In the past, I don't have much knowledge of them other than the fact that they seem to make things the way they want to do it, and there's no little public input.
My feeling is they have gone so far out of their original scope that they were designed to do that it does need to be addressed.
Okay. Any other comments? I got a motion and a second. You have something to say?
I agree that it does need to be done, but because years ago the city agreed not to participate, and I can see the need for reform, I would not be in favor of it.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition?
Nay.
Okay, passes 4-1. Thank you.
Good luck, by the way.
Okay, next. We didn't think we were going to have this today on the thing, but David surprised us and came back from Milwaukee. So, what we have here is the second reading of the change on the city charter versus authority for expenditures. Correct, Mike? So, if anyone has any questions or issues they would like to discuss at this time? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the authority for expenditures change on the Charter Commission.
I'll second it. We've gone over this a number of times before, and I think
Second by
it's time.
Dave Brusick. Do I need to do this by roll call? Okay, so I have a motion and seconded. Councilman Ryan?
Aye.
Councilman Brusick?
Aye.
Councilman Tuma?
Aye.
Councilman Jurek?
Aye.
Mayor Nicolai? Aye. Passes 5-0. So then that goes in effect immediately, Mike, or?
It goes into publication if we get it put together next week.
You're going to be in Phoenix.
But
Who
that
are you
doesn't-
kidding?
We've already put wheels in motion for this to get published next week. And as you can see from the language that I have attached, the adopted ordinance is effective 90 days after its passage and publication.
Okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda, I think, Mike, this is something you want to kind of update us, but then,
This is the infamous modifications or recommendations to the sanitary sewer ordinance, and it has to deal with modifications or changes to the ordinance that essentially reflect what past practice and current practice is, but was never written up and included in the ordinance. And so as you take a look at this, is we attempted to pull together some language. We received the draft ordinance as revised by the city attorney last Thursday. Due to meetings in the holiday weekend, I wasn't able to get to a review with city staff until this morning. And as we took a look at it, there were a number of items contained within the recommendations that we have in front of you tonight that still might necessitate further changes that I got input from Bruce and Patty as we take a look at what we have in front of you. And instead of trying to provide you another revised ordinance tonight, I guess what I'd like to request with your approval is to be able to go back and make further modifications and bring it back to you for introduction at the next meeting. At least we have a draft that we're working from. Excuse me. And we have some recommended changes. But I think if you kind of essentially go to the end, what we're trying to do as exhibited in Section H is that the practice has been, in most cases, our sewer rates is you have a base rate of X amount of dollars and you have a rate per 1,000 gallons on water usage. The issue we have is that in some multifamily, in multiple dwellings, where you don't have separate water meters going to each respective unit, then the question becomes is what is that billing and what should it have been? And what we're trying to provide here is that we allow for that and have, whether you have a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex or a 55-unit apartment building, is that historically, up until this last year when we had to do an extensive review of all of our utility counts that Bruce was involved with and his staff, and as you recall, I think I told you when we started trying to take a look at this, is that we've gone through about 5 different staff people in the utility billing area since I was here. And so from a consistency standpoint, when we put a whole new utility billing software in place in 2009 and go through that staff changes, is that there were some inconsistencies, what we found in our billing practices. And so what we're trying to primarily incorporate with the changes in this section of the ordinance is that if we're providing service to more than one sanitary sewer customer through one water meter, that can be allowed. But the minimum sanitary sewer service charge is going to be multiplied by the number of sanitary sewer units being served. So that, and the argument that has come to bear with one property owner in town is that he only has one water meter, even though it's a duplex. Why should he have to pay 2 base units for one water meter? Well, historically, out of about 3,000 utility accounts, we ended up with about 20 different properties that we discovered that weren't receiving the same billing charges that everybody else was in town. And there was no specific language, and so that's why it's taken us some time to try to create this. And so as we look at this, is that for multiple dwellings in which separate water meters are not provided for each family or residential unit, that a monthly minimum charge or base rate shall be made at the rate set forth by council resolution for each such family or residential unit. So if there's 55 units in there, there's 55 base charges and then a rate per 1,000 gallons for the water that goes through that system. If it's a single family, it's a base rate and the rate per 1,000. If it's a duplex, it's 2 base rates plus the rate per 1,000. But The one property owner took exception to that, and he said, well, I only have one water meter, why should I have to pay for 2 sewer charges? Is part of the question I think that was posed to Councilmember Ryan. And so we've attempted to work on this, and as we did it, to come up with this draft language, and as I said, we had a relatively short window to take a look at it from the time that we got it from the city attorney. I believe there's some further revisions and enhancements that need to be made to really make sure that it's improved for your consideration. The other piece that we saw in trying to look at this as well, if you recall, one of the things we've talked about is the issue associated with the number of snowbirds that we have, people that leave for the winter months. Well, if you recall, and what we've historically done since we made the change here a number of years ago, is residential customers are billed using, excuse me, the 3-month winter water average, which encompasses November, December, and January. I think the count I got today from the staff is we've got upwards of about 40 customers or property owners in the city that leave for the winter months and effectively have no usage for those 3 months.
And subsequently for the rest of the year.
Right.
When they do come back, they're
Right.
not being charged
And
anything.
so,
Right.
as we've tried to look at this, and we've gone back, I think when we looked at it a year ago, I think there was only about 20 that I think, as I recall, Bruce, from the work that your staff did, it was 20 or 20 plus, is that as we took a look at that again today, we're upwards at about 40, so you've got 40 people that effectively aren't having to pay that sewer bill because they have no water consumption for those 3 months. So that's one we're also trying to develop some language to deal with in here as well. And so trying to clarify what has essentially been past practice is what we're trying to do in this ordinance revision. But as we began to do the review and the discussion internally, is further clarification and language improvement, I believe, is necessary. And so we did work, as I told you, we would have this as a draft for you tonight, but it needs further work and refinement, that as you try to deal with this, that the city has historically not had language that's governed how we've charged for some of this. And so we're rectifying and trying to develop and provide language that has essentially done what our practices have been. So I'd rather not have you introduce this ordinance and go back and make a wholesale change to it than to see that we made progress. We have a draft here. We've got some further refinements, and so I think we can, between now and the March 7th meeting, have those refinements made to the point that we're pretty confident that we believe it'll be a good ordinance revision.
Okay. And I understand that too, and I'll convey that to the individual that's contacted myself, and I believe Councilmember Jurek as well. But I would like to make sure that we do make the changes necessary and have it for that next meeting. If at all humanly possible, because this has gone on like 6 months, so I mean, it's.
This was the hard part, getting to this and trying to do this, and we had to set aside doing a number of other things to be able to pull this out and to meet with the city attorney and to get it done. And you know, I can tell you, I've got a list, you know, so long, and I have to try to prioritize and balance, and so there's no question it was overdue. I won't discount that.
I understand it, and I appreciate the hard work here to get this 90% done.
So I'd recommend you table this draft, the staff make further revisions, and bring back the revised draft on March 7th.
Okay. Everyone fine with that?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll table that. Next on the agenda is we were going to do further discussion on athletic facilities and things like that. I think due to the nature of the length of the meeting, I would like to table this item also and put that on probably for the next March 7th meeting. Again, this was just kind of a continuation of a talk about the athletic facilities, including the outdoor pool, and what we need to address for the future needs of the community, also working with jointly with the school districts. So if everyone's fine with that, we'll table that till the next meeting. Next on the agenda, after last meeting, we had a closed-door session in regards to evaluating services of City Administrator Mike Johnson. We used a form from the League of Minnesota Cities We looked at roughly, what is it? Five areas. They are organizational management, fiscal and business management, program development, relationship with organization and council, long-term planning, and relationship with public, the public and public relations. Throughout that meeting, Mike was graded with exceeded expectations in all areas, and so his overall grading was exceeded expectations. I think some of the comments that came out that Mike has at least from my standpoint, since I got to know Mike when I came the mayor, and I think it was 2011 or something like that, that he has continued to develop and grow in certain areas. Like all of us, he knows that he has some shortcomings, but he has improved, and I think he will continue to improve, and with our guidance as a council, and I think he got staff members here that probably have seen some of the changes of Mike from day one. But I think he's done a great job for the city of New Prague. He replaced. It's tough to replace someone who's been in the chair for a long time. So when he took over for Jerry Bonzak, I always looked at Jerry Bonzak like a good flannel shirt. He's comfortable. You talk to him, he says, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." And then Mike came on board, and if anyone who knows Mike, and he knows this isn't a negative, Mike makes sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And I think as the city continues to grow, I think more people are going to realize is we need someone in the city administration's chair that does do that, because in this day of litigation and issues like that sometimes you can get yourself in trouble if you do not do things the proper way, and that's one thing Mike will never sidestep. And even to the point that it even may frustrate Sean once in a while. But again, I just want to emphasize that Mike has done a great job for the city of New Prague, and I'm looking forward to at least this year to work with him again. So we'll see in the future. But congratulations, Mike.
And I'd like to also say we agreed that if Mike ever retires or resigns, we are not accepting his retirement. That also goes for some of the other people that are near retirement.
Yes, I think we are very fortunate with the staff and department heads and all that work for the city, and I think Councilman Bruzek's letter or the article in the last utility bill stating, that we should maybe say thank you once in a while a little bit more to the people who are doing such a great job for the city. And so not only we're saying thank you to Mike, but to Jim and Glenn and Bruce and Mary Jo, I didn't forget about you either. The people who work for the city, it's so.
Yeah, we're blessed.
Yep. Next, consent agenda. Anyone have any questions, issues on the consent agenda?
I had a couple on the invoices, the open invoices. This one to Jim underneath the 2016 patrol subscription from the League of Cities, $850. What is that?
It's an online training course.
Oh, it is. Okay. 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 Perfect. And then in government building, I see we had a $4.13 part, a capacitor, but it cost us $75 to change. Is that tough to do, or?
Yeah. Have you ever had your car fixed, or what?
That was a circuit board inside the electrical,
Oh, it is.
or
Okay.
inside the heater at the police department.
Okay.
And because of the voltages and testing and things like that, takes
Perfect.
an electrician to do it
Okay, makes sense.
in a government building. So, yeah, it kind of irks us too, but
I had one other question too. Are you still?
No,
do
go
you have
ahead.
more? Okay. For the park, the water at the warming house, was that one of the projects or what? I can't remember. From Minnesota Pipe that we're paying water for the warming house.
That was one of the park board's projects to get water into the warming house.
So that is being done. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was. I just want to verify.
Those would be the fittings and stuff to
Okay.
put the piping in there.
All right.
That's drinking water? Or are you talking water to
The water
flood
for the Zamboni and to wash things off and things like that.
Oh, okay.
There's no bathroom facilities in that facility at this point.
Oh, okay. All right. That's
So
what I
no,
wanna
it would be just for maintenance and flooding the rink, things like that. Because right now they're using a hydrant outside, which is sufficient, but in the real cold weather, it causes a lot of troubles with freezing up and things like
Oh,
that.
all right.
Mainly for the Zamboni, so we can keep the ice nice.
Do you have any more, Sean?
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
I have one, Chuck, on the EDA, on the January minutes, Mike, on number 11, it talks about the chart submitted their job update. Is that what we were in discussion about earlier in the fall?
Which one are you on?
EDA, January
Oh,
meeting.
the minutes.
Yeah, the minutes in the EDA, how we talked about the chart.
Yes.
Is it improving, or is there an update on it?
The numbers at the end of the year don't reflect compliance with the agreements or that they didn't hit the goals in the agreement, and that's why you granted a one-year extension. So we are in the process of putting together a meeting probably with the Department of Economic Development, chart, the city, county, and the school to take a look at the likelihood of that changing or where it's at versus what are the options if that doesn't proceed in that direction. So, no, they are not at the targeted numbers per the agreements. They were given the one-year extension, which would go till October this year, but we're not waiting till October to get to that point. We're going to meet ahead of that.
So there wasn't really no update on where they're at with their jobs, it was just more
No.
about getting prepared for the October.
Right, basically
deadline.
just talking with the EDA that we want to get a meeting together with the different groups. Okay, so if no other questions, I guess I'll make a motion on the consent agenda to approve.
Second.
Seconded by Dave Brusick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, fun part, miscellaneous. Jim, awful quiet tonight.
I have nothing.
Okay, Glenn?
I have nothing.
Bruce?
I have nothing.
Patrick? Mary Jo? Mike?
I've got one. Glenn didn't identify it, but we're sending him on Thursday, him and Chris Cavett, to a 15-minute presentation in front of the MnDOT and, excuse me, the Region 7 staff that are involved in funding. If you remember, we had Chris Cavett in for the presentation around the end of last year. I think it was in December on the grant application going after that $1.5 million from MnDOT for excuse me, funding in 2020 for our downtown project. There are 5 communities in the district that are seeking that funding, and so we're sending in Chris and Glenn to put on a good presentation to try to solidify the rationale as to why we should be selected for the use of those funds.
Are you sure Glenn's the one that should go?
Glenn, power suit. Wear that power suit, Glenn.
He'll do just fine. That Chris and the staff and I met last week going through and putting together kind of a summary presentation of a handout and whatnot. And so we had a lot of staff input, but we'll send Chris and Glenn into the presentation.
Okay,
So
good.
we told them to not come back without the money.
That's right.
Right.
Good luck, Glenn. You'll do it. Yeah. Anything else, Mike?
No, and then I will be gone. I've got an email going out tonight when we get done here at whatever time that I will be out of the office on vacation. Patty will be in charge. She's up to her eyeballs in the audit right now, but put her in charge of trying to work with all of these gentlemen during my absence, but I will be gone for a period of vacation.
They look harmless. They probably already got her door keyed or something, so she can't get out. Okay. Sean, you have anything?
Nope.
David?
Yeah, I do. One. I received a phone call this weekend by an individual that lives in Bonesox Edition. That would be South Highway 21. And don't know how much to the east it extends of 21, but it goes on the west of 21. And the complaint was there's a lot of vehicles there that are old, probably unlicensed, and would like the city's investigation of it and to get rid of some of those vehicles.
Sure, if you'll provide my office with the location as best you have it, we'll have PD and take a look at that.
Yeah, I thought either Ken or Chad could probably look at that. I think that's their area. I'm not sure.
Anytime you get those, if you just send us an email, we'll get that initiated. You don't have to wait till tonight to get started. But
okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
Jenna?
I'm good.
Amy?
I'm done.
I'm good. I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Thank you for coming, everyone. I guess I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
we'll go back there, yeah.
Second.
Oh,
You second?
I did.
Oh, David second. All in favor of going to closed session, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay.
Who made the motion on that?
I did, and David seconded. We're on a roll.